FBI informant William Campbell spent 6 years undercover. He gathered evidence about Russian efforts to corner the American uranium market with the help of Hillary Clinton. But he wasn't allowed to talk about it until late last month when President Trump ordered the Justice Department to lift a gag order against him. Here to talk about what Campbell, her client, could tell us before he does go before Congress and when that testimony might occur, Campbell's attorney, Victoria Toensing of dę and Toensing. Victoria previously worked in the Reagan Justice Department and is one of the great Americans. Good to see you.
Oh, good to be here, Lou.
Let's start with the frustrating delay, if I may put it that way, that Congress is experiencing, that we all who are following this very important case and story. Why has there been such a delay? The Justice Department, at the president's order, lifted the gag order, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Why is he not talking to Congress?
Well, because he has to talk to me first, Lou. Look, preparing a major witness under ordinary circumstances is just a Herculean task for a lawyer. You know, I have to go from not knowing anything about the case, which is where I was in September, to knowing everything about the case. And as you said, 6 years, over 5,000 documents, that's a lot to digest. And then you have to get the witness so that the facts are organized in his mind so that he can efficiently answer questions. But in this case, we have an extra challenge, and that is that Mr. Campbell was diagnosed in October of 2016 with leukemia. But this was his second cancer diagnosis in 7 years, and he truly thought, Lou, that he was going to die. And the reason he reached out to provide this information is he said he did not want to go to his grave knowing this story and not having it told.
You know, we all hope, irrespective of the circumstances on Capitol Hill, that Mr. Campbell has a speedy, successful recovery in that disease. What is a realistic time to imagine that he would be able to speak to Congress directly and personally?
Well, let me tell you where we are. Fortunately, he was through with his chemotherapy treatment several weeks ago, and he's now on chemotherapy pills, which are still debilitating and make him so that he's not able to work for long hours. But he did get his doctor's permission to come to Washington a week ago, and I worked with him for several days, and we went over documents, and I'm now just about ready to put the finishing touches on a 10-page overview of a statement for him so that I can give it to Chairman Grassley and they can get an idea of what to question him about, because you can't go in and pick in the poke. They don't even know where to start asking questions. So I have to provide them something that's detailed enough that they know how to ask questions.
Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, obviously frustrated immensely with the Department of Justice and the FBI on a host of issues. And this is a Republican administration with a Republican Justice Department and new leadership in the FBI. And I have the feeling this is the same group of people who were there for 8 years under President Obama. Am I misreading the situation?
It's been amazing to me. It's my old home. I thought I understood it, and I thought under President Obama, okay, well, I know who's leading it. But some of the stonewalling here has been quite perplexing to me, and they haven't gotten out their message as to why some of it's going on. I just don't know.
We do know one thing. It's not helpful. It is also not respectful of the American public's right to know. It is also important that, to the degree we all want to know what's going on. You have looked at the material. You've talked with Mr. Campbell. Give us a sense of how, in your judgment, how important what he has to say, how important those documents are to put before the Congress, and what you expect in terms of impact.
Lou, there were two things going on, and that was that the Russians, Putin wanted to just gain global control of the uranium industry. Mr. Campbell provided documents and memos and all kinds of information to the FBI counterintelligence about that. The other thing going on was how corrupt the Russian nuclear energy industry was. I mean, these companies are all related. They might have different names, but you know, they all report up the ladder to Putin, every one of them. And so knowing these two things, that the companies were corrupt and that Putin wanted to corner the market on uranium, our government in 2010, that's knowing this for over a year, decided that it would be a good idea to sell to this corrupt Russian company, a company that had 20% of our uranium. It just boggles the mind.
It boggles the mind, but it also makes it appear very clearly, as I've researched this case, looked at what CFIUS did and the various agencies that make it up and departments, it was, I guess the only way to say it is they had an easy pass to the result that obviously the President of the United States wanted, or the Secretary of State, or Vladimir Putin. If there is a clear case of collusion between the Russians and the U.S. government, it is that case, in my opinion.
Oh, well, but remember, Lou, this was 2009, 2010.
Right.
And where were we? We were in reset. And we were with President Obama, who thought that if he was just really nice to people, they'd really be nice to him back. And he was going to change the world. You know, Putin was going to be his puppet. Didn't quite work out that way.
Not much of his, at least expressed opinions about foreign policy did work out, did they? Victoria, it's great to have you with us. We thank you.
Thank you.
We hope that Mr. Campbell is on his way to a successful and...
With Reaction Now, host of Michelle Malkin Investigates. Michelle Malkin, you look at all of this in detail, all of this here. This guy, 6 deportations he was facing. The federal government said to San Francisco, turn this guy over, and they refused to obey the law.
Sean, my outrage is laden with melancholy because I have reported and investigated on so many of these cases over the last 25 years, and there has been so little, if any, accountability for people in the federal, state, and local government who have blood on their hands. Kate Steinle and her family never wanted or wished for the publicity that they've gotten, the pain that they've suffered, and the fact that they have no choice but to be front and center in the headlines as they suffer as a result of this verdict. This really is, I think, a damning indictment of so-called San Francisco values. Where is Nancy Pelosi tonight? Where has she been for the last 25 years? This is her city, and it is her open borders policies that have haunted so many innocent people and innocent lives in San Francisco. And it is the conversion of America into a sanctuary nation instead of a sovereign nation that has endangered us. And it is one of the primary reasons that President Trump was elected in the first place, because people made a choice after seeing this fork in the road, after seeing both political parties, Sean, both Republicans and their big business donors and Democrats and their identity politics grievance mongers who don't care about the rule of law in this country, and the collusion between those two things that have created sanctuary policies and a sanctuary nation that still exists to this day. When will the city and county sheriff in San Francisco and that mayor and the governor ever be held accountable for the deaths as a result of bloody open borders? He
spent much of his life, adult life, behind bars. 6 times, as I said, he was going to be taken out. He actually said once he had aimed at a sea animal. He said another time that it fired when he stepped on it. I've been a pistol marksman since I'm 11 years old. Guns do not go off by themselves. There can be accidental shootings, a sea animal, and then you change your story. Here, there's a word for that. That's called lying. That's called,
yes.
They're not even close to being the same story.
That's right. It strains credulity, the story that the defense attorney told. And let me get back to him in a moment with his comments after the verdict, which were absolutely disgusting, some of which you showed. But the idea that he simply happened upon this weapon and it was, oopsie, an accident, when there were witnesses that testified at the trial that they saw him twirling the gun around recklessly beforehand and then scurrying away when the police were looking for who it was that caused Kate Steinle to fall to the ground and be shot in the back when she was, as you said, walking arm in arm with her father on a happy day. The idea that this defense attorney now is politicizing this verdict and rubbing salt into the wounds of Kate Steinle's family, it's disgusting. And it shows you the mentality, I think, that probably infected much of the jury. Did you know, Sean, that any discussion of immigration policy and Jose Zarate's 5 prior deportations, the detainer that was ignored by city and county officials, the pending 6th deportation, the 7 felony convictions, including 4 narcotics convictions, none of that was allowed to be presented to the jury. No wonder they ended up with the verdict they did.
All right, Michelle Malkin, the federal government had requested, and thank you for your time tonight.